After making the check-in video last night, the Most High gave me the go-ahead to push forward in my work and release another video concerning the events that had begun to transpire in 2019. We start with the national championship. On January 7th, the Clemson Tigers won the national championship by beating Alabama University 44-16. Let's look at the symbolism behind these two teams. Interestingly enough, the scriptures refer to the leopard and tiger with the same word, which is namar. The word means a spot or stain, like a tiger with its stripes or a leopard with its spots. This can be found in Jeremiah 13:23, which declares, "Can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? Then may ye also do good that are accustomed to do evil." Simply put, this means that rarely, if ever, does a person change his or her behavior from what is in his or her inner core being, their heart of hearts. So we must ask ourselves, what is in a tiger's nature? Here's an interesting fact about tigers. Tigers are recorded to have killed more people than any other big cat, and tigers have been responsible for more human deaths through direct attack than any other wild animal, period. Therefore, the tiger spiritually signifies one who is stained with sin, who has a violent nature, a murderer of men.
Lucas.
We know that the Antichrist is described as a leopard, which is interchangeable with the tiger in Scripture. See Daniel 7:6 and Revelation 13:2. At the entrance of Clemson Stadium stands Howard's Rock, which is a source of pride for the Clemson Tigers. The rock belonged to Frank Howard, who had some interesting connections to the number 666. Apparently, the rock was put in place in 1966. Howard retired in 1969 and died in 1996. Remember this rock and its connection to the Tigers, as we will revisit it later. Clemson is called Death Valley. We know it was Satan who introduced sin and death into the world. See Genesis 3:1-3, Romans 5:12, and 1 Corinthians 15:21. Psalm 23 verse 4 declares, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." The color used by the Clemson Tigers is orange, which represents the sun and sun worship, which connects back to the worship of Satan as well. It just so happened that the Tigers scored 44 points. We know that the number 44 is connected to Mark Twain's The Mysterious Stranger, number 44, who is Satan. Also, number 44 is Barack Obama. Now let's take a look at Alabama's logo, which is the Crimson Tide. In 1818, the U.S. Congress authorized the newly created Alabama Territory to set aside a township for the establishment of a seminary of learning. A seminary is a college that prepares students to be priests, ministers, or rabbis. I'm sure you can already see where I'm going with this. The General Assembly of Alabama established the seminary on December 18th, 1820, and named it the University of the State of Alabama. The Crimson Tide, then, represents the blood of Yahushua, which was shed on the cross as a propitiation for sin to offer redemption and salvation to all believers. Hugh Roberts, former sports editor of the Birmingham Age Herald, is credited with coining the phrase Crimson Tide in an article describing the 1907 Iron Bowl played in Birmingham, with Auburn a heavy favorite to win. The game was played in a sea of red mud, which stained the Alabama white jerseys crimson. This event connects the Crimson Tide to believers as well, as it describes Revelation 7:14, which declares, "And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest? And he said to me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb." The Crimson Tide connects to Moses and the Exodus as well. Pharaoh refused to let the people go, and because of it, God gave Moses the power to turn the waters into blood. This was one of God's judgment upon Egypt, and it will occur again in the last days. Separate from the Crimson Tide representing the blood of Messiah, the state of Alabama is deeply connected to racism and the struggle for civil rights in this country. And since we're talking about Christianity and racism in the South, this connects Alabama to white supremacy and groups like the KKK. Ironically, Alabama only scored 16 points, which connects them to Donald Trump. Remember I told you how Donald Trump and Trump Tower represents the 16th Trump of Arcana, the Tower Tarot card. This card symbolized chaos and destruction. We'll get to that in a minute. But for now, we know that Donald Trump has been connected to white supremacy as well.
The president came under some criticism over the weekend based on his initial response to all of that violence and racism that you just heard Kayla talking about in Charlottesville.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. This has been going on for a long time.
Notice he uses Obama and himself as representing either side of the dichotomy of racism in this country. In doing this, he is presenting the duality of the black versus white found in the Masonic checkerboard. These two individuals are only different sides of the same coin. The problem with racism in this country is a manufactured problem meant to keep the citizenry divided. As it pertains to racism, Alabama has had a long, storied history. On Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965, in Selma, Alabama, some 600 civil rights marchers were viciously attacked by state and local lawmen with billy clubs and tear gas. On March 25th, 1965, Martin Luther King led thousands of nonviolent demonstrators to the steps of the Capitol in Montgomery, Alabama, after a 5-day, 54-mile march from Selma. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, in Memphis at the Lorraine Motel. In 1999, a Memphis jury ruled that the local, state, and federal governments were liable for King's death. Interestingly enough, April 4th connects Martin Luther King's assassination to Barack Obama, since April 4th gives us the number 44. The city Memphis was the capital of ancient Egypt as well. Remember, Moses led the Hebrew slaves out of bondage in Egypt to the Promised Land. By now, you also must know that the so-called African Americans are the true descendants of the Hebrew people. According to Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, we were brought into Egypt again, which is America, on ships and sold into slavery by our enemies. And even today, our people remain in bondage in the land of our captivity. However, there will be a second Exodus, and this is exactly what MLK referred to in his speech. I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the Promised Land.
He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over and I've seen the Promised Land.
This was a clear reference to Moses going to the top of the mountain to receive the 10 Commandments from the Most High. Tragically, this was the last speech MLK would make before he was assassinated the next day. It should be noted that Martin Luther King Jr., also known as MLK, as well as Malcolm X, were both assassinated as sacrifices to the pagan god Moloch. Moloch is the biblical name of the Canaanite god associated with sacrifice. The name of this deity is also sometimes spelled Molech, Milcom, or Malcolm. The name Moloch results from a dysphemic vocalization in the Second Temple period of a name of a deity based on the root MLK, meaning king. Recently, they announced the remaking and re-release of the movie The Lion King for 2019.
But a king's time as ruler rises and falls like the sun.
Notice how the Lion King is connected to the sun in worship of the rising sun. The rising sun also connects back to Barack Obama.
One day, the sun will set on my time here and will rise with you as the new king.
The Lion King's Pride Rock connects back to the Clemson Tigers' Pride Rock. We know that pride was the cause of Lucifer's downfall. This can be found in Ezekiel 28:17. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by the reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. You will recall that Obama connected himself to the Lion King at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, while at the same time mocking Donald Trump for the birther movement.
I'm prepared to go a step further. Tonight, for the first time, I am releasing my official birth video.
Interestingly enough, another king has been in the news recently regarding race. Republican Congressman Stephen King denied claims that he is a racist because of statements he made to a newspaper.
There was an unusual speech on the House floor today. A Republican congressman denied he's a racist while explaining comments that have gotten him in trouble with many of his colleagues.
Notice the headline reads, Congressman under fire. This is a subtle reference to the fact that sacrifices to Moloch were passed through the fire. The point being the population is constantly being put through satanic rituals cast through the television by the media. All of this is happening near MLK's birthday celebration, which is also connected this year with the blood red moon or lunar eclipse, which occurs on January 20th. Now, let's turn our attention back to the 16th Trump Tower again for a second. According to its description, the tower is a symbol of endurance, and its destruction an allusion to sudden and shocking realizations that crushes old views and persuasions, even the view of the world. These people are actively attempting to destroy the old world order to make way for the new world order. This includes a change in how we view government, national sovereignty, borders, race relations, and religion. In keeping with his description as the 16th Trump, Donald Trump has said he is willing to keep the government shut down for years.
That the shutdown could go on for months or even a year or longer. Did you say that? And is that your?
I did.
Is that your assessment of where we are?
Absolutely.
This is nothing more than an attack on America. The government shutdown is a self-inflicted wound on America by its own government, just like 9/11. Not only does the shutdown affect federal agencies like Homeland Security or the TSA, it also affects the Department of Agriculture, which could potentially affect the production of crops or the food supply. It also affects the Department of Health and Human Services, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, in that inspectors who are responsible for inspecting the meat we eat, drugs, and other products we use to ensure that they are safe for consumption are no longer working. This leaves the population vulnerable. Not to mention that if the shutdown continues, many people will lose their government benefits, meaning people will go hungry.
We're getting a picture of how the fight in Washington could affect people across the rest of the country. If Congress and the White House can't come to a deal to fund a quarter of the government by February, millions of Americans who receive benefits from the country's food stamp program, SNAP, risk having their assistance cut off. The IRS has also been forced to send home 90% of its employees ahead of its busiest season. That could delay tax refunds.
It is clear that this shutdown could turn into a true national emergency.
This message is being broadcast by the department.
In classic fashion, the 16th Trump, Donald Trump, served McDonald's to the Clemson Tigers football team. The name McDonald means son of the ruler of the world. John 14:30 tells us the ruler of this world is Satan. Remember, McDonald's logo is the golden arches. The movie Dark Shadows connected the golden arches with Mephistopheles, who is the devil himself. It is clear that an evil plan is afoot, and it seems that 2019 will be filled with upheaval, insanity, and madness. Lil Wayne performed during the halftime show at the national championship. He dressed in drag while performing with Imagine Dragons. They sang a song called Believer, which declares, "You made me a believer. You break me down, you build me up. Believer, believer. Pain, you make me a believer." We know that the dragon is Satan, and Revelation 13:2 declares, "And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. The power that is given to the Antichrist by the dragon will cause the lost to mistakenly believe that he is the true Messiah. Because of this false belief, there will be much bloodshed, a crimson tide, beheadings of all who refuse to serve the Antichrist or take his mark. This is the sacrifice Satan demands from his adherents. We, however, who are believers and followers of the Most High, have already washed our robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. If you have not surrendered your life to the Most High, the time to do so is now. If not, you should prepare yourself for what surely is about to come. Amen. Shalom.